42 points. Do I need to say anything else?
What happened in this game? I don't think Draymond should have been suspended at all.
Are you out of your damn mind? You are out of your damn mind.
Hey, Josh, can you smell?
Really?
Cooking. Has come back to SmackDown
and completely stolen Cody Rhodes' WrestleMania moment. This is total. No, you don't get to talk right now.
Oh, really?
No.
You don't get to talk.
No.
I am projecting. That's what I do in the media. You guys are afraid to put your freaking takes out there. Yes, that's what I'm doing.
You, again, just
you don't know how sports media works? This is my job. And yes, I did project high expectations for the Chicago Bears, and they have failed miserably. Happy holidays, Chicago fans, and happy holidays to all of you. Welcome in Brandon Lewis, host of Brandon's World, Ungar to the Master, the host of the Sports Room Talk Show. Josh Ungar, it is the final of what has been an incredible year of championship rings.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's been an incredible year for Chicago Bears fans, but or Cleveland Browns fans, or New York Giants fans, or Jets fans, or Titans fans, or Jaguars fans. Do you want me to keep going?
Well, there's a lot of fan bases and a lot of sports that have not had a great year. Let's put it that way. As always, make sure to subscribe to Championship Rings YouTube channel, Championship Rings 216. You can follow us on X at Rings Champion, Instagram at Rings Champion, and Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Josh, last week I was speechless as we start off today's show with this topic. Bill Belichick, I did not think it was going to be possible, and literally about 24 hours after we got off the air here on Championship Rings, it was made official. He is going to be recruiting college kids, him and his staff and Michael Lombardi and probably the likes of Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels are going to be making their way to Chapel Hill. Bill Belichick is the new head coach of North Carolina.
Yeah, I guess we can call him Chapel Bill. There you go. I don't know if this says more about. Let me ask you this question. Does this say more about North Carolina or the lack of interest from teams in the NFL?
Oh, I think it 100%, and I don't even think this is a debate, says that it is about the lack of interest in the NFL. Because in reporting from multiple reporters, including Diana Russini, a very well-respected reporter, formerly of ESPN, she's worked other places, currently at The Athletic, she reported that, and I don't believe this, but apparently it happened, that Mr. Belichick himself called the New York Jets to gauge his interest in their head coaching position, which to me tells you all you need to know about how much Belichick really wanted to get back in the NFL. I think Belichick really wanted that Bears job. I don't think the Bears want anything to do with Belichick and his development of a young quarterback because they saw what Belichick has done post Tom Brady. And I think that it is part of it. You know, not only the fact is Belichick 72 years old and the fact that he's probably going to take a couple years to get a team, you know, in relative position back to Providence. And the fact that, again, at that age, you know, he may only have a couple years left. But also, I think teams would take Belichick the coach. I don't think they're taking Belichick the coach and the general manager, which was his problem when getting the Falcons job.
Which I think the main team I kept hearing over and over again connected to Belichick was the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if you heard that same thing or not, but that's all
there was a lot of Dallas. I told you last week, to your shock, I was hearing a lot of Jacksonville if that job were to come open. But it sounds like, both those teams are going to make their decision on their coaches at the end of the year. And it sounded like Belichick said, I'm not waiting. I have to make this decision on North Carolina now.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't know like any of the players at North Carolina, so I don't know if they have a good team or not. I gotta be totally honest there. I know they're in the ACC, which other than like Miami, Clemson, SMU, you don't really have anybody really to worry about in the ACC. Like,
Yeah, but it's also the ACC. It will never be in comparison to the SEC or the Big Ten.
no.
And the other thing is, I don't know if you know this. So after June 1st of this year, upcoming year, I should say, 2025, Bill Belichick's buyout for the rest of his 5-year contract in North Carolina is only $1 million, which means Belichick has all the leverage. And I said this last week, and I'll keep repeating it. I think Bill Belichick is going to North Carolina for one season. That's it. I think he will be there for a year. I think this is all a ploy to get his son Steve Belichick the head coaching job at North Carolina. I think a year from now at this time, we'll be talking about Belichick plotting his exit from NC, returning potentially to the National Football League, and letting Steve Belichick become the head coach.
And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I just don't know what teams are going to, for lack of better phrasing, bend at knee to give Belichick everything he wants. Like what you were saying earlier of not just being the head coach, but being the general manager and constructing the roster he wants it to be. Because let's face it, like he drafted N'Keal Harry when he was in New England. What happened to him? I think he drafted some guy named
I'll,
Colton
I'll,
Strange.
I'll just make it easier on you. Name me the offensive skill position player, because Belichick can draft offensive linemen. We all know that. Belichick's been a great evaluator of offensive linemen and obviously defensive talent for years. Name me the last offensive impact player they've had on the team, not named Rob Gronkowski.
Julian Edelman,
But
Wes
he,
Welker.
but he was a 7th round pick. I'm talking about guys that Belichick actually drafted. I think Gronk was the last Pro Bowler.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't even did the Patriots drafted Edelman, right? If I
They
remember.
they did, but he might have been the year after Gronk, might have been the year before. Welker, I know, was not drafted by New England. He started off in Miami and then ended up in New England. Um, but I mean, Belichick's track record with offensive talent is not the best. What I find interesting about the whole Belichick conversation is, a few years ago, everybody was saying he's the GOAT coach, not best defensive coach, not best this, just he's the GOAT coach. And now, all of a sudden, with the success that Andy Reid and co have had in Kansas City, the conversation has sort of turned, in my opinion. And that conversation is Belichick is the greatest defensive coach of all time, coordinator, head coach, it doesn't matter. And I don't, a lot of people are talking about that Don Shula record. As I told you guys last week, Andy Reid is going to get that as long as he stays in the NFL for the next 3 to 4 years. And the only way Andy is not going to stay is obviously if they win a three-peat and maybe he hangs it up. I doubt it. But that's where we're at. And so I think Andy Reid in 5 years, half a decade by now, if we're still doing this show, which I hope we are, in December of 2029, I think we're going to be talking about Andy Reid being the GOAT coach. And if Belichick fails at North Carolina, I do think that hurts his legacy.
I mean, it was like a perfect storm pairing Brady with Belichick, and it kind of feels like it's the same thing with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the difference. Andy, he may have not won Super Bowls without Mahomes, but he made a Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb. He got the Chiefs to multiple playoff appearances with Alex Smith. He made the Eagles multiple playoff appearances with the Jeff Garcias of the world, the Michael Vicks of the world. Bill Belichick, outside of having Tom Brady, has done absolutely jack squat as a head coach.
That part is true. Um, although didn't he get the Patriots to the playoffs one season without Brady? Or am I
No,
wrong?
they finished 11-5, and they lost the head-to-head tiebreaker to Miami the year that Brady went down with the ACL. Oh yeah, you're right. 2021 with Mac Jones. I'm
Yes.
sorry, he did. I was thinking about it obviously
Yeah.
before. So,
2021.
and by the way, that game was forgetful because do you want to know what happened in that playoff game? Do you remember?
I know Buffalo blew them out. I was
They
just
got their doors blown off. I think Buffalo scored the first 8 drives of the game in a -6-degree snowstorm.
yes. Um, I also remember the game where Mac Jones was the quarterback and Buffalo or New England only threw it like 6 times.
Like no, it was 3 times. I remember it. Mac Jones went 1 for 3 in the game.
Yeah, but still, no, I totally get what you're saying. Um, but I'm look, I get what you're saying, but it's like Brady and Belichick turned out to be, the perfect duo, combo, whatever word you want to use there. And it looks like Reed and Mahomes are turning out to be the perfect combo. Like there's nothing you can do there in that sense. Um, like I've heard the whole conversation. Would Mahomes be doing the same thing if he was here in Cleveland, or if he was
That
in the,
answer would be unequivocally no. I think he'd still be good. I don't know if he'd be great.
and that's my
Not not
no,
not
that's
saying not saying that he cannot eventually move on from Reed and be great, but it's the infrastructure he got. Brady got it in New England. Mahomes got it in Kansas City. Owner,
that's
GM,
my
coach, but also the rules 20 years ago were different. The rules played in the hands of Belichick, and Andy Reid was still winning. Now the rules are played in the hands of Andy Reid, and he's thriving.
but that no, that's my point though. Is like we for people who say like would Carson Wentz have worked out if he was okay? Maybe not Carson Wentz, but you get my point though. Like we look at
It's
all these
it's not necessarily what pick you go; it's where you land.
exactly. That's my point.
That's your point. All right, well, sticking with college football, Josh, we have the first round of the college football playoff kicking off this Friday between Notre Dame and Indiana in South Bend. Then on Saturday, we have a triple header, which starts off with your Penn State Nifty Lions in Napa Valley, or excuse me, Happy Valley,
Happy
taking on
Valley.
SMU. Then we have Texas and Clemson going head to head in the Long Orange State before ending it in the shoe with Ohio State, Tennessee. And, I got to be honest with you, and the gambling lines kind of support this. I think the lowest spread out of all 4 of these games is Ohio State, Tennessee. I think the first 3 games of this, which is Notre Dame, Indiana, Penn State, SMU, Texas, Clemson, I think all 3 of them will be blowouts in favor of the home team. I think that, we talked about this before, that home field in college football is, in my opinion, the biggest home field advantage you can get potentially in all of sports, and that includes professional sports as well. And I think that with these coaches, with a bye, they have a couple weeks. I think the big dogs are going to show out against some of the lesser teams like Clemson and SMU, which you can make an argument if it wasn't for this 12-team conference championship format, maybe they don't get into the tournament. And then I think, quite frankly, Indiana got exposed by Ohio State. I think Notre Dame will put a wicking on them. I'm really only looking forward to the Ohio State Tennessee game because I think that's a fascinating matchup.
Yes. I will say this, and we'll get into Steelers Ravens later. If you have plans, or if you're thinking about making plans on Saturday, December 21st, cancel them because it is a football lover's dream. You've got, let's see, you've got SMU, Penn State starting things off. Then at 1 o'clock, I think that's when Texans Chiefs is kicking off.
Correct.
Kicking off. That's followed by Clemson, Texas, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And then that's followed up by Steelers, Ravens. And
Yes.
then you've got Tennessee, Ohio State. Seriously, Like, if I wasn't going to be on an airplane that day, I would find my favorite spot on the couch and not move my butt. I'm
Well,
just going to say
you
that.
you just told people they had plans to cancel your plans. Sounds like your plans aren't getting canceled.
No, I mean, I kind of can't. So, you, you know what I
Hey,
mean.
they got Wi-Fi on most of these planes now.
Yeah, they do. And luckily I can DVR these games. But anyway, um, the interesting thing is the Penn State game is kicking off at noon, and yet they want it to be a whiteout. Like I'm
We had the same
as
discussion when they did the Ohio State Penn State game.
yes. Although that wasn't the whiteout game, but I'm just like, wait, you're making it a whiteout even though it's noon. No, that doesn't have the same effect. But nonetheless, I agree with you. The Tennessee Ohio State game is the most interesting. Is this is Indiana still going to be around after Friday night's game? I honestly don't know. And I mean the
I
actual
doubt it.
no, I mean the state cuz they might just burn it to the ground
Ugh.
cuz it's the Battle of Indiana. Uh but
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. You're right.
yeah, it's an in-state matchup.
Yeah, that's an angle I didn't take from it. Still, I think Notre Dame is the most. I think that they are the superior team in that matchup. I am fascinated to see if Clemson can survive a half with Texas because I think that that's their only shot. I don't know what the quarterback situation is in Texas. Quinn Ewers, I said it a couple weeks ago, he's got a lot of Colt McCoy to me in him. But I just think Clemson this year they've lost to Georgia in the SEC. I believe they also lost to Ole Miss in the SEC. Both pretty bad losses. I think
No,
Dabo
they lost
Sweeney
to South Carolina,
or,
not
or
Ole
so,
Miss.
okay, South Carolina. Thank you for the correction. I think the Devil Sweeney, and his refusal to use the transfer portal on NIL, I think it's going to catch up to him here. Steve Sarkisian with a couple of weeks off, I think he's going to have a lot more time to game plan. I think there's a lot of people out there saying they don't know how good Texas is, even though they've nearly lost to Georgia twice. I think they make a big statement. I think they put a whooping on Clemson.
Think about this for a second. Oregon won the Big Ten championship.
We had
They're
this
the
debate last week. I was very angry about this.
this is so stupid. It's like, okay, Oregon, you're the number one seed. Guess what? You get the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State. And if
And
you
then,
survive
if you
and
survive that, to your point, then you got to play potentially Texas.
yes, just to get to the national championship.
Where
Whereas
then, in my opinion, you're probably playing Georgia or Penn State the way the bracket looks.
yes, whereas if you're Penn State, guess what? If once you beat SMU, you're facing Boise State. You can win
Yeah.
that game. What Penn State's like, thank you.
As I told you last week, as a nifty Lions fan, you're the team that I thought worked out the most out of any draw, out of any seed in the tournament. I am interested to see because there's been a lot of conversation about should Ohio State have wanted this game to be flipped? Should they have wanted to go to Tennessee and get out of Ohio Stadium, get out of that raucous environment? Because it is going to be a home field advantage, but Ryan Day is going to get the crap pulled out of him. We all
Oh,
know that. And
oh
so,
yeah.
the way I see this game for Ohio State, Tennessee is very good on both lines of the football, the offensive and defensive lines. I think Ohio State has to come out early, opening drive, touchdown, and silence those critics. Because if this game is the way Michigan started, a little choppy, Will Howard not playing well, couple of punts, Tennessee takes an early lead. God forbid, I think Ohio State will be on upset alert.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'll tell you this though. Um, if Clemson is able to, get up a touchdown early, maybe that puts a little bit of a scare in Texas. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm just a big fan of Steve Sarkisian. I think he's a really good coach, especially at the college level. And I think that offense and that talent is so explosive. I think the only way Clemson puts a scare in them is, to your point, not only do they get up early, but what if they're up 10-7 at half, or even if it is a 10-7 or 13-10 game at half?
Yeah. Um, like we've doubted Dabo before, and he's pulled things off. So
Well, but that was back in the day when he had a legit quarterback in Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence.
yeah, that's true, and he doesn't really have that now. Um, I'll tell you this though. Uh, You look at the this Indiana Notre Dame game. Whoever wins this, I'm just like, okay. And I don't view either team as a legit national title contender. Like
Well,
Notre
I
Dame,
think Notre Dame, if they win, they're going to be playing Georgia. And to me, if they get Georgia without Carson Beck, that all of a sudden on a neutral field, I think Notre Dame is more tough than Indiana. I think they could potentially give Georgia a game. I'm with you. I think it depends on the factors, but I wouldn't completely write Notre Dame off. Indiana, I would.
yeah. I'm not saying Notre Dame would get blown out by Georgia, but it's just like Notre Dame. It kind of goes back to the whole they're an independent because they're Notre Dame. Like if they were in the Big Ten, for example, I would give them a better chance against Georgia. That's just me.
Well, yeah, I just, for this first round, sticking to it, I just think all home teams are likely to win. And again, I think the only close game we will have that's within 10 points by the end is Ohio State, Tennessee. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree. But what I'm concerned about as a Penn State fan is, this is another big game again at home with James Franklin as head coach. Will he actually find a way to win, or will he, live up to his reputation when he has a big game against Ohio State or Michigan and just fall flat?
Yeah, enough said there. Speaking of big games, Josh, oh boy, 48-42, Buffalo Bills over the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell, in my opinion, strikes again for Jalen's Detroit Lions, kicking an onside kick, which he didn't realize he had to declare with 12 minutes left in the game. And I love Dan's honesty right after. He said, after they recovered the ball, I thought it was the wrong decision. Obviously, the David Montgomery injury, I think, does hurt Detroit because they are such a physical, run the football team. I think it really does help Jared Goff because even though Jared Goff had a phenomenal performance on Sunday, what have we seen in the Lions' two losses this year? To Tampa and to Buffalo, both at home. Both of those games, Jared Goff was throwing the football a lot. They were not running the football, and their defense could not keep up with the scoring of the opposition. So that, to me, combined with the Lions' injuries on defense, and all of a sudden, Detroit, who looked like about week 8, week 9, they were probably going to get the number 1 seed. They are in real danger of falling to the 5. And if they somehow completely blow this up, they could end up the 6th seed.
Yeah. Because I honestly think the NFC North and potentially the number 1 seed is coming down to that Week 18 game in Detroit between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. Um, I'll tell you this though, I think Josh Allen locked up MVP with this performance.
I completely agree. Josh Allen has been on an absolute tear the last couple of weeks, and that loss to the Rams is going to potentially, as I said last week, be the backfire for them to not get them 1 seed. We'll see what goes on with Kansas City. We're going to talk Mahomes' injury pretty soon. Um, we'll get to this team in the next segment because I disagree with that the number 1 seed is for sure coming out of the NFC North because there is a team in the NFC East that I think is lurking, and all of a sudden the door is open for them to get that number 1 seed.
Well,
And
here's what I mean. By the way, Jalen's chiming in. He says the Bills kicked our ass. Josh Allen is the MVP. You can make it as many excuses as you want if you're a Lions fan, but you can't deny that we got outplayed by the best football player in the world.
By the way, Jalen, you did not get outplayed by the best football player in the world because I don't care what his stats say. Everybody in the world knows the best football player in the world wears number 15 in Kansas City.
Yes. I mean, he's going for back to back to back Super Bowl championships, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, like a 2-time league MVP, something like that. And you can doubt him if you want, but what happens when he gets the ball with like 13 seconds left? Ask the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. Listen, I think Buffalo is really good. They're the second best team in the AFC. They are likely, I think that they're gonna. I know they have New England 2 times in their next 3 games. They're gonna win those games. I forget who their Week 17 opponent is. I want
I
to say
think
it's
the Jets.
Jacksonville or somebody easy.
I think the Jets.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is that second game with the Jets, so they should go 3-0. Which means I think that they're going to be the 2 seed. They are likely, in my opinion, to probably play the Chargers or the Bengals in that first round matchup. Which I think the Bengals would be a hell of a 7-2 matchup if Cincinnati can get some help from the Broncos. But listen, Josh Allen sensational. I still don't trust the Bills in a big spot.
And you know what? I can understand that.
What have we seen from Sean McDermott to prove that on game day and in the playoffs, they are going to stick with that identity of run the football with James Cook, and they're not going to all of a sudden panic? Because my biggest fear with Buffalo is even if it's a hypothetical 7-2 matchup with Cincinnati and Burrow's on the other side, or you do get a matchup with Lamar and the Ravens, or even Mahomes and Kansas City, Buffalo gets down even 3-0 in the game, and Sean McDermott and Joe Brady panic and go, "We got to abandon the run. Josh Allen, save us." And we've seen that's when Buffalo loses games.
Exactly. So, like, what I do like about the Buffalo Bills though is since they got rid of Stephon Diggs and I guess Gabe Davis for that matter, there's not one guy on the offense that's like, you gotta get the ball to this player. Like Josh Allen is spreading it out to everyone.
He is, though. I would say Shakir has become his number one target in the slot. He reminds me a lot of Cole Beasley back in the day for Dallas and Buffalo. Very good slot receiver. I think Kincaid, too, has become a little bit of that number 2 target for that offense. But for me, and we've talked about this, right? Philly, Detroit, Baltimore, Green Bay. I will put Buffalo in the conversation of they could be a very elite football team. But the teams that I mentioned before Buffalo, what they all have in common is they will unequivocally run the football. Buffalo, the question is, are they going to stick to the run?
I would include Minnesota in there because they love to use Aaron Jones.
Not as much. Did you see the play discrepancy last night? I mean, the Bears quit. Let's be real. But at one point in that game, it was 37 passes to 11 runs. So they don't run the ball as much people think. They use Aaron Jones in the red zone. But to get down there, they are throwing the ball. There's not a problem with that. By the way, I don't put Minnesota in that upper echelon of teams. I'm sorry, I don't trust them. Sam Darnold's their quarterback. I don't think they're a legit Super Bowl contender, even if they get the number 1 seed. I just don't. At some point, Sam Darnold's going to turn into a pumpkin. How many great games has Sam Darnold played this year? I know this is a different topic, but since you got me started on it, he didn't even have a great game last night.
But when you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, you don't necessarily need to have a great game,
well,
do you?
When you're playing the Chicago Bears, you don't necessarily have to have a great game.
Yeah. DTR's starting for the Browns this week against the Bengals. My guess is if he was playing the Bears, he wouldn't need to have a great game, and he could still win.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if DTR is a professional NFL quarterback. But I'll tell you who did throw the football around the yard, who did squash all the beat they had, who did take a 10-minute drive going into the fourth quarter because Mike Tomlin decides to punt the football for the Philadelphia 47. I'm saying, what the hell? And Josh, this is why I don't like defensive coaches. Case number one. I can trust my defense. We'll get the ball back at the 3-yard line and we still need 2 scores. Mike Tomlin, you did not get the football back because the best offensive line in football with the best weapons in football, and Saquon Barkley barely played in the first half because Minka Fitzpatrick looked like he almost screwed up his knee there in the second quarter, and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Grant Katera, and Jalen Hurts, who only missed 1 pass in the first half, dominated that Steelers defense. Philadelphia ran the football late with not only Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Gainwell as well. Jalen Hurts made a few key runs, stepping up in the pocket, and my Eagles took 10 minutes off the clock, a 23-play drive to end the game against one of the best defensive coaches and one of the best defenses in football. Do you know how hard that is to do?
Okay, so hear me out. I'm not
Here comes Josh's Eagles hate. I'm waiting. Come on, Josh.
No. Actually, I'm not gonna hate on the Eagles. But I just want to give you this comment, and I want you to respond to this. Have you ever seen a team that is like in position to get the number 1 seed be on a 10-game win streak like they are? Or 10-game win streak now, right? Double check it.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen a team that is like on a 10-game win streak, in position to potentially get the number 1 seed, and have this much like dysfunction and dissension throughout the season? Have you ever seen anything like this?
I'll answer your question the way the great Colin Cowherd said this week on his show with this perfect analogy, in my opinion. They are the married couple who always fight in public that you think is going to be divorced in 2 years, and they're going on their 45th wedding anniversary.
Like, when you look at this team, it almost doesn't make sense, if you will. Because, like, we heard what A.J. Brown was saying last week, and then they come out and they're getting A.J. Brown the ball early. I think that was mostly to kind of shut up the talking heads, the experts, whatever phrase.
It was also because Barkley was not running the ball well because Pittsburgh actually did a very good job containing him in the run game.
Yes. Which I think Philly sometimes does that on purpose, where they come out and they try and establish the passing game in order to set up the run game.
It's throwing to score, running to win, and Saquon Barkley has been a second-half runner all season long.
Right. But sometimes, this is just my thought, sometimes I think Philly does it a little bit backwards, and that's part of their issue because of what you were saying. That they're
This is the greatest comment in the history of comments. Thank you, Jalen.
But just hear me out on this, because I love what we did for the headline here. They out-physicaled the Steelers, and that's true. And your offensive line has been fantastic all season long, and we've seen the types of holes that Saquon Barkley has been able to get throughout the season. So my thing is, maybe if you try to establish the run early, then you can open up your passing game more late. And
they tried that against Carolina, and it didn't work. I have been a believer in the offensive mindset. I know the old school mindset is you run to set up the pass, as you're talking about. I have been a believer of throwing to set up the run, because I think as the game moves on, defensive linemen get worn down. It's easier to run the ball late than it is early. And so that's why I believe if you throw early and you get in those early situations and you get those light boxes, it is easier to run the ball. I get what you're saying, trust me, and I do think that's what they did against Washington in Week 11, and they're going to have to do it again against Washington this week, because Washington is going to give my Eagles everything they can handle on Sunday in the nation's capital because this is Washington's last stand. They don't want Philly clinching the NFC East on their home field.
No. Um, which, by the way, the NFL announced that Browns got flexed out of Sunday Night Football in favor of Falcons Commanders. Why?
I mean, if you took a look at the schedule, it was really outside of the Saturday games they put on there. Was I mean, Atlanta's going to still be in playoff contention. Washington is going to be somewhat of a contender. Like those two teams are at least in contention compared to Miami, who we'll talk about them. I think a little bit maybe when we get into our Week 16 top games. Obviously, Cleveland's not in contention anymore.
No. Which it was obviously the right call, but I know we're going off topic, but still, I'm just like, Packers Vikings was right there. What?
Yeah, making that, I wonder if it's because the rule that you can't have more than 5 or 6 primetime games. I wonder if Minnesota or Green Bay's had that limit because they have both been on a lot.
Or the other thing I'm wondering is if I think that game's on Fox, so Fox might have protected it.
Fox might have protected that. You're right. Anyway, my biggest takeaway from Pittsburgh here, we'll get into that Steelers Ravens preview here in a minute, but my biggest takeaway from Pittsburgh is I think they were sort of overlooking Philadelphia a little bit because of this big matchup with Baltimore because they did not really need the game. Because all they need to do is beat Baltimore. Easier said than done, obviously, but if they do so, they are the AFC North champions.
I don't know how you can overlook your in-state rival because you and I were talking about this last week. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia absolutely hate each other.
Yeah, but without George Pickens, I mean, the offense looked lifeless. And credit to Vic Fangio and my defense for doing that. I acknowledge that. But that offense looked like it didn't even care. I mean, I don't know what that game plan was from Arthur Smith. It was halfback tosses and throw it short, and that's that.
Yeah. Pittsburgh needs to get George Pickens back for this game in Baltimore, which, again, we'll get to in a minute. But let me tell you this. As much as I want to credit Philadelphia's offense in this game, and sure, Pittsburgh's defense or offense was depleted, but I want to give your defense the full credit here. Because I feel like there's been questions about the Eagles' defense all season long.
Has there been? They've been the number one defense in the league since the bye.
At least I feel like there's been questions. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I feel like at times we've questioned the Eagles' defense about, like, when they, like, for example, how they looked against Carolina.
I think that was the biggest question mark anybody's had about the Eagles' defense in 7 weeks. And as I said last week, I think they overlooked Carolina because they were looking at Pittsburgh. Carolina was the easiest game they have left in their schedule.
Yeah, and from what I remember, I'd have to go back and watch. I don't remember Philadelphia's defense doing a lot against the Browns. They didn't have a ton of sacks, if I remember.
It was a 20-16 game. Watson missed a couple throws. It was a game with no flow whatsoever.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, like, there were a couple questions about the Eagles' defense. I'm not trying to say they're a bad defensive unit. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But it's
certainly a 180 from what this man, Coach Pencil, was doing a year ago when he absolutely wrecked my football team.
Oh, I agree. But it's just like, because I guess I'll say it like this. Because of those couple, like, questionable type of games or clunkers, whatever you want to say, I at least had a couple questions about the Eagles' defense, which I think is valid. So I feel like this game went a long way in answering that. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Sure. Maybe it's because I'm a fan. I think we have the best defense in football. I think these young guys Jalen Carter has been outstanding. Quinn Mitchell and Cooper DeJean have completely changed my defense. Cooper DeJean being inserted after the bye week is what changed the Eagles' defense.
I'll tell you, in my opinion, the key, the X factor for your defense the rest of the way, Nakobe Dean.
Well, I don't know. I agree with you, but I would also add the other linebacker, Zach Bond, who was an outside linebacker in New Orleans, and Vic Fangio turned him into, in my opinion, the best middle linebacker in football this year. He's been an absolute stud. If you don't know who Zach Bond is, he's number 53 on Philadelphia. He's got a bald head, and he makes every tackle known to man practically.
It'll be interesting to see how Philadelphia plays the rest of the way because it's all division games. They've got the Commanders this week, then they've got the Cowboys at home, and then they've got the Giants, which is basically a bye week at this point.
Well, that game could be potentially for the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to get to Mahomes. We got to get to the injury. You were obviously at the game, Kansas City at Cleveland. The Swifties were hoping for a Taylor Swift appearance.
She was not there.
She was not there. So sadly for them, I know a couple people that went to the game just to see the lovely Taylor Swift. But, it sounds like Mahomes escaped major injury. I was kind of looking forward to seeing my former quarterback play against the Houston Texans this week, and it sounds like that's not going to happen anymore. But do you have any concern about the Chiefs as a whole, Mahomes' injury? I mean,
their offense did not look great on Sunday against the Browns, to be honest with you. Their offense has not looked great all season. But it sounds like Mahomes was a full participant in practice, and it sounds like Hollywood Brown was a full participant in practice this week. But I'll tell you what, this Browns game was placed in an interesting spot for the Chiefs because now they have Houston, Pittsburgh, and Denver. So to close out the season, including the Browns, they had 4 out of 5 games on the road, 3 of which, and the last 3 games, are against playoff teams.
Yeah, Houston is a playoff team by default. If there was anybody else better in that division, I'm not sure Houston's a playoff team. I mean, they are not that good.
No. They definitely fell short of my expectations for them.
Yeah, you had them as the number 1 seed. I mean, I'm not going to be talking because I had Cincinnati as the number 1 seed. Part of that, though, is because of their defense. I mean, I seriously think if you put Cincinnati and Houston on the same field, who wins?
I have no idea.
That's what I'm saying.
But here's the thing, though. We know that although Houston has had problems all season, their defense can get after the quarterback. We know that.
And the Chiefs' major weakness of their whole team is their offensive line, specifically at left tackle.
Yes. And what is Pittsburgh good at doing defensively?
Getting to the quarterback. Even TJ Watt had a strip sack, and he almost had 2 on Jalen Hurts. Now, he went down in the game. We'll see his status. I would guess he's going to play against Baltimore. I haven't heard anything else on that. But yeah, Mahomes, do you know he's been hit the most out of any quarterback on 3rd down this year? That's not just sacks, that's hits.
That doesn't surprise me. And to finish it off, what is Denver good at doing defensively?
Getting out to the quarterback. Now, that Denver game is interesting because Kansas City could have the 1 seed locked up. Denver could also have their playoff positioning locked up. That game may not mean a thing for either team, or it may mean a lot for either team, because if Kansas City loses to both Houston and Pittsburgh, then they got to fight for the 1 seed, assuming Buffalo wins out.
Yeah. Jalen, I'm about to piss a lot of people off. There's no shot in hell, Casey. You can doubt Mahomes if you want to.
Listen, I would never say there's no shot in hell, especially if they get the 1 seed. Going to Arrowhead in a playoff game, the only 2 people that have beat Kansas City in Arrowhead in a playoff game for the last 10 years is Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. and both of them were on game-winning drives in the AFC Championship game. And Brady arguably shouldn't have done it. If I'm forgetting the name of the edge defender for Kansas City who jumped off sides. The
Oh,
the the
I forget.
2018 um AFC
And
Championship
also,
game.
I still say the punt went off the Patriots' thumbs, but whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, so I mean, you just get my point how hard it is. I'm not going to doubt Kansas City either. I think we both agree on that. Until
I
somebody
mean,
beats them in the playoffs, I can't pick against them. No, I can say I think Burrow or Allen could go in there. And again, if Cincinnati gets in by the neck of their teeth, I don't care what people say. Cincinnati will be in every game they're in. I am not discounting the Bengals at this point as a playoff team, and I'm not discounting Cincinnati from going in as the seventh seed, knocking off Buffalo, and going into Arrowhead and doing it to Mahomes because I think they could.
I could see it. Um, which think about this: like you could get Burrow Allen in the wild card round. Like
Yeah. Now
that.
again, things have to happen. Denver has to lose the Chargers. Cincinnati has to beat Denver at home. Cincinnati has to go to Pittsburgh and win, which, depending on seeding, maybe Pittsburgh rests guys. So a lot has to happen, but it's not like a 0% chance, is all we're saying here, folks.
Yes.
I I think out of all the
They.
teams that Kansas City would have to potentially play, I'll be honest with you, I think the team they're most scared of would be Cincinnati. Like I think that they obviously think Buffalo's scary for them because of Buffalo's capabilities, but I think they have so much confidence that they know how to beat Buffalo. They're not scared of Buffalo.
Would they still be scared of Cincinnati after how the last AFC Championship went, though? And like
Well, you can make an argument that if there wasn't a pass interference in that week 2 game, Cincinnati wins.
that, I agree with. But like,
Not that it wasn't pass interference, because I don't want to lay that out there. It was clearly pass interference. But if that defender just lays off, he's a
yeah.
half a second early, the game's over.
Plus, I mean, yeah, Mahomes has a high ankle sprain. Guess what happened the last time he had a high ankle sprain? He won the freaking Super Bowl.
All right, let's get to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, AFC North rivalry. I'm going to say this right off the bat. How the hell are the Pittsburgh Steelers 6.5 point underdogs? It's just way too many points for this rivalry game that's going to come down to a field goal.
Yes, which it's funny you say that because the last time they played each other, Pittsburgh won without scoring a single touchdown.
Oh my God, that was the sixth field goal game. And they might as well do it again because Pittsburgh just refuses to score more than one touchdown a game unless they're playing the Bengals.
Yeah. Uh, it the way Pittsburgh does it makes no sense. But then again, I could say the same thing about Baltimore because of their refusal to use Derrick Henry in the run game. I don't get it with the Ravens. Why did you sign Derrick Henry if you're not going to use him? I don't get it.
I mean, he is second in the league in rushing behind Saquon Barkley, so it's not like they don't use him at all.
I know, but go back to the game in Cleveland. They went away from him in the second half. There's other examples throughout the season I could point to.
Yeah, but there's also examples of them using him in the second half. I guess to your point, it's just not as consistent as you would like it to be. I think this is the game, though. Like, Baltimore needs this game, or they're going to be going on the road. And by the way, their likely opponent to go on the road, in my opinion, looking at the seeding and everything, would be going right back to Pittsburgh.
I agree with you. Which, like I said,
Which would be interesting because think about this. We both know in the NFL, we always talk about division games. You can throw the record out the window. We know how hard it is to beat a team twice in a row, let alone 3 times in a row.
yeah,
I would favor Baltimore if they lost to Pittsburgh here in Baltimore. I think they could go back to Pittsburgh and beat them in a playoff game.
I remember this happened a few years ago. I think it was the Saints against the Panthers, if I remember correctly, where the Saints won both games in the regular season, and they were trying to beat the Panthers for a third time. That sounds right.
It happened a couple years ago with the Eagles and Giants, but technically the Week 18 game, the Giants weren't playing anybody, so they rested. So, like, did they beat them 3 times in a row? Technically, yes. They killed them all 3 times. Um, but yeah, I find it very fascinating. I think Baltimore needs the game more here. I think Baltimore wants this AFC North crown. I think they're going to get it. And boy, would it be poetic for this game to end. Justin Tucker finally getting his footing underneath him and making a game winning field goal, because that's what it smells like to me.
Yeah. I mean, you know how it usually goes with Pittsburgh, Baltimore. It's a put on your hard hat. It's defensive battle. There's been bloodshed in this rivalry. Like, this is my favorite rivalry in the NFL. I know there's Eagles Cowboys. I know there's Eagles Giants and Packers
Well, Eagles
Bears.
Giants is not a rivalry. We own the Giants. It's like Packers Bears, not a rivalry. I think the entire AFC North may have the best rivalries in football right now.
Well, I can't really include the Browns in there because they're
Browns Steelers is a real rivalry. I think Browns Cincinnati is a real rivalry. Browns Ravens is a real rivalry. The Browns don't lose division games. 2 of the 3 wins this year are division games. So you can't say that.
in my opinion, Brown Steelers. Even even with the anomaly this year, I'll still say Brown Steelers is not a rivalry because the
Listen,
Steelers.
you are, and I understand why, because I've been with you for years, that Browns and Ravens should be the Browns' biggest rival. But those players and those fans will believe forever it's Pittsburgh, and that is a rivalry.
You know my feelings about it. We don't need to get into it. Steelers Ravens for me is the best rivalry in the NFL. I love this rivalry. Like when these two teams play, it's generally not just bragging rights on the line. The AFC North is on the line, or they've met in the playoffs and the AFC
They've met in the
champion.
AFC Championship. I was going to say the 2008 game where Troy Polamalu, who 99% of times would jump off sides before snaps, did it again, did not get called, and stuffed Joe Flacco.
Yep. So
I'm
when
not being a Pittsburgh hater, guys. TJ Watt's offsides by half a yard every play. Look it up. Watch your TV screen.
so when these two teams play, I'm finding a way to watch. So hopefully the airplane has TVs. I'll just say
Shall
that.
we? Shall we get to the other Week 16 NFL games? Because there's a lot of games this week with playoff implications. My number 5 game of the week: Niners Dolphins. The loser of this game is unequivocally eliminated from the playoffs. In my opinion, in my mind, both of these teams have already been eliminated by the playoffs, especially San Francisco after that rainstorm game where there was not a single touchdown scored in that Rams-Niners game. Miami just looked putrid against Houston. Jalen Waddle's status is up in the air, and Mike McDaniel facing off against Kyle Shanahan. We know what Shanahan did to Mike McDaniel a couple years ago in San Francisco. Very interesting game for me because Miami obviously needs the game, as does San Francisco, to stay alive. Number 4 drops down the list a little bit because I don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the home team. But Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Seattle Seahawks, who, and I don't mean to say this comment out of any light. Don't take this as, an all God forbid comment. But in my opinion, if the Seattle Seahawks start Sam Howell in this game, Sam Howell basically reminds me of the white Jameis Winston. Big arm, talented, throws a lot of touchdowns, throws a lot of interceptions. That to me is Sam Howell, Jameis Winston. The difference is one was a high pick, one was a low pick. If Sam Howell's the quarterback, the Vikings are going to win that game. So that's why it goes down a little bit down the list for me. Number 3, can my Philadelphia Eagles clinch the NFC East? It's not in that 1 or 2 spot for me just because I think the Commanders are sort of linked into that number 7 spot in the NFC. But obviously, big game for Philly if they want to keep the number 1 seed alive. Number 2 game for me is Thursday Night Football. The Chargers coming off a shockingly embarrassing home loss to Tampa Bay, where Baker Mayfield was absolutely on fire. Denver should have lost that game to Indianapolis if Jonathan Taylor didn't drop the football on the half-yard line. They did not play well. They are looking to avoid getting swept by the Chargers and maybe even positioning themselves, if they win this game, to the number 5 seed in the AFC. And then number 1, we just talked about it, Steelers Ravens, say no more.
Yeah. Number 1, I agree with you. Steelers, Ravens. That's easy. I also agree with you about number 2. I got Broncos, Chargers there. I was the one who predicted before the
I was just about to tell you that. I've said it on Brandon's World. I don't know if you heard it yet. I will give you full credit because I predicted Denver to be an 8-9 win team, maybe potentially fighting for a playoff spot. You were the one that flat out said no, Denver is going to make the playoffs. And listen, Miami was worse than we thought this year. The Jets were way worse than I thought this year. So the AFC East was down as a whole, and the team that benefited the most from that was the Denver Broncos, and they have rightfully taken advantage, and Bo Nix is ahead of schedule.
Yeah. So I would say this game's a little more important for the Chargers, though, than it is for the
Oh, for
Broncos.
sure. Especially 2 losses in a row. The heartbreaker to Kansas City. They didn't even play well against Atlanta when they won that game. So I think this is a good bounce back spot. I know there's no such thing as a home field advantage in LA, but typically this year, home teams have been good on Thursday Night Football on a short week. They're looking to sweep their division rivals. I think it's a big game for the Chargers.
The funny thing is, this game wasn't even supposed to be on Thursday Night Football. This was originally Browns Bengals.
Yeah.
And then the Browns Bengals was actually the first Thursday night game to get flexed out. Think about that.
To me, people are making fun out of the Bengals. I think it would have been flex even if the Bengals were 12-2. And no one wants to watch DTR play quarterback. And by the way, thank you, Jameis Winston, for throwing 3 interceptions. Thank you, Browns, for giving 6 turnovers to the Chiefs, because I was playing against the Chiefs defense in my fantasy football playoff and lost because of it. So thank you very much.
Okay, anyway. It's funny you mentioned the Chiefs because that's actually my number 3 game is Texans Chiefs. Because of the possible playoff implications attached to this game. If the Chiefs were to lose, that puts Buffalo in a position to maybe capture the number 1 seed.
Maybe, but Kansas City's going to lose 2 games. That's
right. But I'm saying, because they have Pittsburgh and Denver on their upcoming schedule, could this be a potential trap game for them? I know it's at home, but Mahomes is hobbled. We've already had questions about their offense, as we alluded to earlier. We know Houston can get after the quarterback, so it's a tricky spot for Kansas City, I think. And plus, Houston's going to be locked into the number 4 seed. I get it. But still, I think this is a somewhat of an important game for them, if nothing else, just for their confidence. Because, they have not looked like the team we all thought they were going to be this season. So, can you go into Kansas City and look like a team that can put up a fight? Do you remember the game in Houston last year between Kansas City and Houston? And Kansas City won that game, but I think it went into overtime, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it earlier in the year?
I think it was late in the season.
I don't quite remember that game.
Let me look this up. Let me look this up because I want to make sure I got it right. It was 2022, December 18th, 30-24.
That's what I thought. I did not think they played last year.
Okay, so my bad on that one. So my mistake on that one. But my point though, Houston took them into overtime the last time they played each other, albeit it was in 2022, but still.
Well, and they didn't have Stroud, and as much as Stroud struggled this year, he's an upgrade over what they had, obviously.
That is correct. Yeah, it was Davis Mills at quarterback for
Oh
them.
my goodness, the immortal Davis Mills. Okay, number 4 on your list.
Okay, number 4, I got Eagles Commanders.
Okay.
And then at number 5, that's where I have Vikings Seahawks.
Okay, so we essentially switched San Francisco, Miami, Kansas City, Houston, and just, rearrange the order a little bit. My thing is, for whatever reason, I don't think this Kansas City Houston game is going to be very entertaining.
And I understand that. You know what's interesting? And maybe it's because we already think they're out of it, despite being 6-8. Neither of us have the Sunday night game on the list.
I think Tampa stomps Dallas. I don't know why they didn't flex that game out. I don't think this game is close. I think that is a bad matchup for the Dallas Cowboys, who are winning to screw up their draft positioning. Thank you very much, Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why we've been subjected to the Dallas Cowboys so much on prime time lately. Like, they had this game at home on Sunday night. A couple weeks ago, they had Cincinnati at home.
It's very weird. The NFL this year, to me, has been very gun shy on flexing games.
Yeah, and the games they have flexed, some of them have worked, others have not. Like, I remember they flexed the Colts Vikings game into Sunday night, and that game
over Eagles Jaguars, which, I mean, that game turned out to be a better game than Colts Vikings.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Chargers Bengals one worked out. I forget who was in that position week 11. But that was the Sunday night game they flexed into. I was very surprised they didn't opt to flex Green Bay, New Orleans on a Monday night this week, because I don't even think that's a contest, but whatever.
I mean, what game would you have put in that slot?
You could have put Minnesota, Seattle. You could have put Philly, Washington. You could have put even San Francisco, Miami. I would have been okay with any of those 3 over New Orleans, Green Bay.
Yeah, but Seattle was just on prime time last week.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, let's get to the NBA Cup, because the ratings are telling you that no one cares. But it does conclude tonight. I don't even know if anyone knows it's happening. Bucks Thunder, it's Shea versus Giannis, and yet it's getting no media attention whatsoever, practically. I don't know if that tells you the state of the NBA. Listen, I said this was a bad idea. I really don't care about the game. I'll probably tune into the second half of the game. This does not get my juices flowing because, in my opinion, the Milwaukee Bucks, I know they've been on a little bit of a heater lately, but I still don't trust them.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of this game because Chet Holmgren's not there for Milwaukee or for Oklahoma City. I'm sorry. Chris Middleton is basically just coming back from injury for the Bucks. I don't know what to make of this game. I guess I would favor Oklahoma City because they're the younger team, but it's like I don't really care. And the NBA is going to expand into Vegas in a couple of years, probably. We know that's happening. So,
yeah, when they do their team expansion, I think Seattle's going to get their team back. Vegas is going to get their team back. I do wonder, and I have sort of brought this up, Josh, not on this show particularly, but in my own show over the past couple of weeks. The NBA right now, there's a lot of stars. Your Jokic's, your Victor Wembanyama's, your Luka Doncic's, your SGA's, your Giannis's, but all of them are almost international stars. And I don't know if it's just they don't want to be the face of the league, if maybe America is having a little bit of a harder time because LeBron has been the face of the league in the past decade and a half. But it feels like to me the NBA marketing has almost become baseball-esque, where they're holding on to LeBron and Curry and Durant, and most of their teams are pretty much irrelevant. And it's like, we should be talking about there's a huge prime time matchup tonight on Prime ABC with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Shea Gilders-Alexander. And seriously, people would rather debate who the next head coach of the Chicago Bears is going to be and who's going to pull off these upsets this week in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you look at the Christmas slate of games, none of them are that interesting. Like Philadelphia, Boston, no thank you. San Antonio, New York, meh. Um, Lakers, Golden State, okay, that's somewhat interesting, I guess. Dallas, Minnesota, okay. Uh, Phoenix, Denver, sure. Like,
Think about what you said about Dallas, Minnesota, because that was last year's Western Conference Finals matchup.
I know. But it's just like, think about this. Like, you could have put Cleveland, Boston here, and that would have, to me, that would have been great.
And
Or,
instead, the NBA put it on a random Sunday night during the middle of the football season.
I know. And the last two games are both in February. um, whatever.
No,
Like,
so,
I would have even, like, me, I would have, if not Cleveland, Boston, I would have done Orlando, Cleveland. That
yeah.
That's just me.
Look,
That's just
look,
me.
let me throw this out there to you. I've just named all these stars: Jokic, SGA, Luca. I'll even for the sake of discussion, because some people want to put him there, I'll put Jason Tatum in there. Um, it's sort of this new phase of the league, if you will. I think all of those superstars, even like Jokic and Wemby, they're all less popular to me than the person that changed sports in 2024, aka Caitlin Clark in the WNBA.
Yeah, I, I,
And that's not a knock on the WNBA at all. To me, it shows a problem with the NBA. And, you can say all you want about fans not having access, and that's why the ratings are down. I get it. I also think, listen, John Moran's spectacular. He's not doing a lot of dunks anymore. Anthony Edwards is taking 15 threes a game. He's not getting the basket anymore. Every team plays the same style. Everybody plays the same way. It is really, unless you get a team like the Cavs that are moving the ball left and right and knocking down a bunch of threes, it's not an aesthetically pleasing product anymore in the regular season. That's one of the things I've been trying to tell you the last couple of years.
yeah, I agree with you. Like, we tried to make Anthony Edwards into the next face of the league, and maybe he can get there, but, like, he hasn't taken that next big step forward this season like we thought he was going to. Like, I pushed for SGA to win MVP this season. And yeah, Oklahoma City is still the top team in the West, but unless Chet Holmgren can get back to what he was pre-injury, I'm not 100% sure they're coming out of the Western Conference.
Yeah, I don't know. The league's in a weird transition phase right now. And I get that they got the new media rights contract, and maybe Amazon Prime and NBC can bring some love back to the game. I don't think this new All Star format, for the record, is going to work either. I just think they're trying too many things. They're trying too many different gimmicks. The in-season tournament, the NBA Cup, which remember last year was just called the in-season tournament. Now it's called the NBA Cup. Now we have a tournament in the All-Star game. What is this? As we get to our last topic here, what is this, professional wrestling with all these tournaments?
Yeah, I don't know. Um, like, I don't get what the NBA is doing. I really don't. But I can tell you WWE is going in a fantastic direction. Uh, Here's my thing with it. All the matches, we kind of knew who was going to win each match. That I think that was part of the problem with Saturday night's main event. Was it a good show? For sure. I'm glad I watched it. I had to watch it later because I was working during it, but nonetheless, I still went back and watched it. It was still like a very good show, don't get me wrong. But I think part of my issue was it was just a little too predictable.
So my thoughts on it are this. I loved the old school nostalgia feel to it. I loved the setup of the entrance where they had the fans practically on top of the wrestlers. I thought that was great. I love the fact that they did the old school commentary table with Joe Tessitore and Jesse the Body Ventura. I love the fact that Pat McAfee came back at ringside. I love the fact that Jesse got to call the main event with Cole and McAfee. Loved the ring ropes. Loved the retroness. Loved everything about the aesthetic. I thought every match was a good to great TV solid match. We were questioning whether or not they could get 5 matches in on one show. Maybe some of them were quicker, but again, that's because they had to get the 5 matches done within the 2 hours. I've seen a lot of complaints online by the IWC that it was a glorified house show. I don't feel that. I thought it was one of the best TV events WWE has put on, not including PLEs, all year long. I thought the atmosphere from that crowd was incredible. And, I thought some of the matches, such as Gunther, Finn Balor, Damian Priest, triple threat match, was up in the air there for a little while. After Gunther retained the world championship, I kind of thought that Cody Rhodes is going to retain the Undisputed Championship after all heels had won the rest of the night, even though Chelsea Green was technically a babyface because that crowd popped incredible for her, and I called it here last week, and she absolutely deserved it. But I do think that, and as I talked about last week, they were playing in going into this show a major angle either at the show or coming out of it. And I think the pile driver by Kevin Owens to Cody Rhodes to take him out will lead to a major angle that, as we talked about, I thought all these feuds could conclude at WrestleMania. They're all concluding the first Raw on Netflix. I think we're going to get Cody, Kevin, first Raw on Netflix in the stipulation. That's when the Viper Randy Orton will make his return. And I do think part of the reason why WWE did it that way instead of not being on Saturday Night's Main Event is because SmackDown this week was taped for the holidays. They did not want to spoil anything when it comes to SNME. And, if Cody Rhodes were to be the champion standing and doesn't come out to the ring, that seems kind of weird. If Kevin Owens was the new champion, that would have been kind of weird not to have him on the show. So to do that backstage angle, I think sets up very well for a SmackDown a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think we're going to get the triple threat match at WrestleMania. Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. I'm not sure who's going to be champion going into that match, but I just have this feeling that's going to be the match, and I'd love to see it. I think they would put on a hell of a show of a match.
I still think it is the Rumble triple threat.
If it is, I'm okay with that. I would prefer that triple threat to be at WrestleMania. That's just my personal taste there. Nonetheless, though, again, I thought, did I enjoy the show? Yes. Did I think it was a little too predictable? Also, yes. But you could argue that's not necessarily a bad thing at the same time.
Well, I got all the matches right. Even I thought some of the results at the end could have flipped either way. Like, I was not sure halfway through that match if Gunther was going to retain or not.
Yeah. My thing with the Gunther, Finn, and Drew match was, if you remember back to the Intercontinental Championship triple threat at WrestleMania, what was the thing that allowed Gunther to retain? It was the fact that Drew and Sheamus kind of canceled each other out because they focused more on each other. That was my thinking was, okay, Priest and Balor have kind of been going back and forth, so they're going to go focus more on each other. That was my thought process.
The story of the match going into it was Gunther had sort of lost his confidence after losing to Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel. He did not perform well against Damian Priest in Survivor Series. If it wasn't for Balor, Priest might have walked out world champion. So the fact that Gunther delivered that powerbomb to Priest on the steps came in, delivered that missile drop kick to Finn Balor, pinned him clean with that power bomb. The story they are going for here is Gunther is now back to his usual winning ways. And like I said earlier, and as I alluded to, Josh, I think at WrestleMania 41, he will be champion and he will be defending it against a certain 16-time world champion.
Very well could be. Um, it'll make the Royal Rumble interesting because to see.
Oh, the Royal Rumble is so interesting. So I don't know who's going to win the match. I think it all depends on what happens in the Undisputed Championship match. My best guess right now, as I'm sitting here today, is the winner of the Royal Rumble is your tribal chief,
Roman Reigns?
Roman Reigns.
And who does he challenge?
He challenges Cody. And The Rock steps aside and enters in the match. And we get a triple threat with The Rock, Roman, and Cody.
Huh.
And John Cena will win the Elimination Chamber and challenge Gunther for the World Championship.
So you're kind of banking on nostalgia for WrestleMania 41 in a sense.
I'm banking off what we've been telling the story of since WrestleMania 40, and I do think Cena will get a World Championship match. I don't think Cena Gunther is nostalgia. I don't think Cena's nostalgia because Cena's sticking around for 1 year. He's going to be a full-time wrestler. I would not call that nostalgia. You can't tell me you are not looking forward to the John Cena retirement tour and being there for a full year for John Cena and want him to win the title one more time.
Oh, it's going to be fun to see his retirement tour. I'm not going to Monday Night Raw when it comes here in February. That's I just don't want to be around for that. I had a terrible experience the last time I went to Monday Night Raw here in Cleveland, so no thank you. I'm sure you're gonna go, so have a great time.
I already have my tickets.
Nice.
As you probably would have guessed.
Yes. But I'll tell you what. I hope when they do this Raw Netflix debut, I really hope it's commercial free because you're doing tribal combat. I almost said Rollins. No, Roman Reigns against Solo Sikoa. You're getting Punk against Rollins. My guess is that's where you're getting Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, which I think they might actually do Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky at WrestleMania. It feels like that could be the direction.
I would not love that. I can see it, but I don't love it. I don't think it's a WrestleMania match.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest Io Sky fan in the world, so.
Okay. I know he said he's retired, but let me just throw this idea out there for just a match. I don't know about WrestleMania, but it feels like it could be a WrestleMania type match because of the two personalities. Logan Paul, Pat McAfee.
Ooh. Josh, out of all people, that pitch was the last one I'd expect to hear from you. I want the match. I would love it because you're the bigger in-ring guy. You're not so much the storytelling type guy. I'm surprised out of all people, you're the one pitching that match because it doesn't feel like a match that would cater to you.
Except actually it would because I personally loved the story between Seth Rollins and Logan Paul leading into their WrestleMania match a couple years ago, and I thought the match was fantastic. And the promos they were cutting on each other were fantastic. And you listen to Logan Paul and Pat McAfee, their promo work would be just awesome.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this year of Championship Rings. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the holidays. It was a fantastic holiday show. As always, my man Josh Ungar, I appreciate it so much. Happy holidays to you and yours. We'll be back on Tuesday, December 7th. We will have one of the biggest Championship Ring shows
you mean
of all
January
time.
7th?
Did I say December? Oh my goodness.
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
we will have pretty much the semifinals of the college football playoff all set and ready to go, as there will be games on Thursday and Friday of that week. We will have the NFL playoffs all set and ready to go. We will have the first Raw on Netflix done and in the books. And of course, anything that happens in the NBA over the holiday weekend, and even potentially some wild NFL coaching news. Let me read this comment here real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm the other one, the one before that about
Oh,
the holiday. Is it me, or am I not a fan of any games being played on Christmas or any other holiday after the Halloween, 4th of July, and Thanksgiving? Um, I personally like the NFL on Christmas. Maybe it's just me because I was getting bored of the NBA games on Christmas, but maybe it's just me. I don't like the games that are played like Christmas Eve, the day after Christmas. Like the day of is fine. I want to take a break afterwards.
yeah, I agree with you. Um, Grandize is trying to get me to just say why I didn't enjoy Monday Night Raw when it came to Cleveland. WWE goes,
Read Josh's article on Voltage Live when he talked about his experience at the Guardians game, because it's very similar to
yes,
what he experienced at Raw. That's what I would say to you. Shout out Voltage Live, by the way.
yes. Um, so, and then we have that one. Well, I had you on, but yeah. All right, so that's gonna do it, and yeah,
Happy holidays. We'll see you guys in 2025.
yes, January 7th, not December.
January 7th, 2025.